Hi folks, we're back with Module 3. My name is Paula MacLean and I'm your leadership coach. Module 3 is all about teamwork and communication, and we're going to have some fun looking at the different ways we can build effective teams and sustain good team communication. And I want to remind you that you need to download and print the handout that goes with the module, and make sure you have your workbook with you as well as you're working through each of the modules in the Mastering the Basics series. Let me start off by talking a little bit about some qualities that are typical of really high-performing teams and really great high outcome teams. And the first one on our list is that we have a shared vision and goals. Vision is what do you see for your team, and the goals are the how and the what to get to that vision. The second thing is that we want to make sure that teams communicate frequently, openly, respectfully, clearly and directly. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about a team agreement that you can create. The toughest thing about teamwork is getting people to know how to communicate well, but also to be prepared to deal with issues directly. So the directly part of this list is probably the toughest piece, particularly if they hit a snag, if there's a problem, if somebody is, their behavior is bugging them. Those kinds of things tend to get swept under the table. We tend to ignore them or smooth them over. And those are normal kind of human tendencies, but it's a real challenge to get the team out of often a cultural pattern or a historic pattern of just kind of going with the flow and not talking about difficult issues. So important quality of effective teams is the second one on your list. The third one is inclusivity. Teams are not private clubs. I've worked inside organizations as a consultant and have people tell me, we got a great team. And when I start interviewing them one-on-one, often the newcomers or the people who think a little bit differently will say, yeah, it's a great team until someone disagrees, or until when someone kind of speaks up and says something that's different, or, has a different idea, and then the whole thing kind of comes to a grinding halt. And very often the power within the team, vested sometimes with some of your long-term staff, actually overrides and kind of puts down sometimes some of the new ideas of people. So effective teams, high-quality teams, are teams that embrace everybody coming in, that welcome dissenting voices, different perspectives, new people. And inclusivity also includes all the forms of diversity that we have in our society that we need to be welcoming of inside our teams. Fourth one on the list is to be open to new ideas and new ways of work. High-quality teams are not stuck in what is, and they don't have a belief system that says what we're currently doing is exactly what we should do forever. So a flexibility, a willingness to change, a willingness to be self-critical about practices and better ways of doing things, and a lack of attachment to anything other than improving practices. So lack of attachment means we like not what we are doing now, but we like best practice or improving practices over time. Fifth thing on our list is that they're solution-focused rather than problem-focused. And you've heard me say in another module that, being a problem finder is cheap and easy, but being a problem solver is much more difficult. And I really love sitting in on a team meeting where people throw out an idea, they, identify a problem, and the whole thing feels very dynamic, it feels very energized, and it feels very focused on what's the right thing to do, what's the better way to do, what are our solutions to a particular issue. And there's very little frustration around being presented with a problem, because effective teams are a group of people who begin to look at every problem truly as an opportunity to get better, to do something different, and they embrace those kinds of things inside their teams. Sixth thing on our list is that cultures within teams are so important, and they're real drivers of team behavior. And the culture of providing support and encouragement and feedback is absolutely critical within a team. And I mentioned a second ago that good teams are self-critical. So the whole notion of doing things better and doing things well is really important. In order to do that, team members need to have each other's backs. They need to give each other encouragement, and they also need to be open to both positive and constructive critical feedback. Now, I want to include every supervisor and manager of the team as a member of the team. So that means that supervisors and managers have to be prepared to be giving encouragement and support support and positive and critical feedback, but it also means that every individual within the team, peer to peer, needs to embrace that kind of a culture as well. Seventh thing on our list is that we want to be welcoming of diversity of opinion, and we want to be able to constructively disagree. Now, it takes time for teams to bond, and it takes time for them to get to a point where it's safe to be constructively disagreeing with each other. And we're talking about constructive disagreement because the in-your-face kind of aggressive, hostile, I think you're all wet, you're wrong, that kind of disagreement is not the kind of team bond that we're attempting to create. What we're really doing is attempting to create a team that says, if I'm constructively disagreeing, I'm usually parking the word but, and adding instead of the word but, the word and. And so when someone throws out an idea, when you constructively disagree, you say something like, and to add to that, or and in addition to that, I was thinking this, right? So you may not agree, but you disagree in a constructive way that throws your idea, your position, your perspective on something in a positive way out on the table for the rest of the team to consider. Eighth point on our list is that leadership within the team is shared. So this means that you have supervisors and managers who are obviously in leadership roles by their job title, but strong and effective teams have a diverse base of leadership that comes from different teams at different points in time. I was working just recently on a committee, and my job is to facilitate each one of the meetings. And we had a flip chart in the room, and we had some felt pens and some tape, kind of normal kind of meeting process. And I was flip charting along and doing my bit, and I sat down for a second while the group was just kind of considering an idea. We're kind of mulling things over, and I was kind of waiting for them to settle on what a decision that they needed to make. And they were doing just fine. They were on topic, they were listening to each other, there was different perspectives coming forward. And then all of a sudden, one of the team members popped up and said, I'm going to flip chart this. Now, for a moment I thought, I wasn't doing my job. But then I thought, no, good team work means that everyone takes on a leadership role. And so here was a member of the committee, not in necessarily a leadership role within this group, popping up and saying, you know what? I can flip chart this. This is something that would be helpful to the group. And she was absolutely right. She did a great job of the flip charting. So what we're talking about here is then any individual within the team at any moment in time can step up and play a leadership role. Next thing on the list is that roles and responsibilities are clear but not rigid. We want teams to be flexible and fluid in how the work gets done. So we know that everything that needs to be done is very clear and that each person has a role and responsibility on the team. But we also know in good teams that we have people coming into other roles and other responsibilities willingly, either to pick up some slack or to cover off for someone that is not available at that moment in time, or just simply because the job needs doing and somebody steps forward. So there's an equalness for how the work is distributed, but there's also a willingness to just step up and do a little bit more or go the extra mile. And what I'm reminded of is that when I go into a restaurant and I watch the flow of how customers get service in the best served environment, we have people who don't kind of rigidly attached to the role. So you might have a hostess whose job it is mainly to seat you, to give you your menus, and to ask you what you would like to drink. So in a typical restaurant, that's the host or hostess's job, and that's all that they need to do to fulfill their role. So they're pretty clear on that. But if the restaurant is busy and the people who are waiting the tables are really, really busy as well, the hostess in a great restaurant who is a member of a team is going to say, can I refill your water glass? Do you need more coffee? And they're going to watch for an order that might be coming up that needs to be delivered to a table that perhaps the waiter or the waitress doesn't have time to do because they're serving somebody else. So that's the nature. We're clear, but we're not rigid in our understanding of the work that we do. 11th thing on our list is that we are caring about meeting each other's needs. Sorry, this is 10th thing on our list. We're caring about meeting each other's needs. And it says we have each other's back. We care about each other both personally and professionally. And we have an interaction style and a communication style and a conversational style that is caring and supportive of each other. You know, everybody, every week, every day, every month is going to have a moment that doesn't, kind of causes stress. A little meltdown might happen, And in a supportive team, that is understood to be just part of the nature of working with people. So while we understand that for the people we serve, our clients or our participants, it's really important that we understand that for the people that we're working with as members of the team. And, there's a certain amount of, I've got your back, shrug it off, this is a moment in time, it'll be fine. We all have those days. Short of someone being a real drama queen and feeding off of that and, underperforming as a result of that, which does happen in teams, frankly, better to have each other's backs and to not only be flexible, but to be caring as well. 11th thing on our list is to understand that when people do underperform, that they're given immediate and very specific feedback by supervisors or managers inside the organization. Now, this says that in a team manner, when we do this in a timely fashion, it really raises the bar for everybody's behavior, because what we condone, we're going to get more of, right? So the things that we choose not to give feedback on then will be understood by the person who's doing them, as well as other people who are around who are aware of the situation, to be understood as, okay, that's all right. Whatever that person has done or not done, and when perhaps they've missed a part of their job that they're supposed to be doing, if we don't give feedback on that, then other people will say, I guess management doesn't care about that, so let's all do it. Now, there'll be some people who know it's wrong and they won't do it. But if we give feedback very quickly, it says, nope, that isn't okay. There is the standard, there is the bar, and the bar gets raised for everybody, so it's really clear. Now, I'm not advocating for be picky and petty and be constantly on people's backs about little things. We need to understand that if you do that and you give too much feedback, which in general is not our problem, but occasionally it is a problem, is if we give too much feedback, it actually demoralizes the team, and it makes them feel picked on, it makes them feel like they could never do anything right. It makes, as a team, the gossip and the kind of chit-chatting behind the scenes increases rather than decreases. So be careful that when you're giving feedback, you're not raising the bar so high that people can't reach it or that your expectations are unreasonable. So creating a standard that is reasonable, which of course is our 12th thing on the list, is that high standards for professionalism, quality of work, outcome and results is part of what teams embrace. And that very much often comes from the supervisor or a manager, but remind yourself that those standards and expectations need to be reasonable. Now, there is a cool guy that does a blog that I subscribe to every Monday, and his whole idea is that we're going to kind of make Mondays less miserable. In his website, it's called Nonprofits with Balls. I didn't make it up. If it offends you, I'm just telling you, it's a really cool website to go to. And every Monday he publishes a blog post. So I found them enormously helpful. And he's kind of a cut to the chase kind of guy. So the reference for his website and for this next section is actually on a page about 3 or 4 pages away from you. So it's there for you and you can go take a look and see what you think. So one of the things, this fellow's name is Vu Le, and what he talks about is agreements within teams. Now I'm going to walk you through 10 team agreements that I've actually kind of adapted from his work. Kind of fit our sector a little bit more. But I want you to consider not just sort of endorsing these 10 agreements, but kind of embracing the idea that within your team, you would spend maybe, an hour or two in the future saying, let's create a team agreement. And that you would use some of the points that are on this list and consider them and massage them and tweak them and think about, does this fit for your team? It will not work if you just take these 10 agreements to your next team meeting and say, here team, here's our agreement. It doesn't work that way, and people need to come up with their own ideas, and the process that you lead needs to be one that kind of gets them to the point where they have an agreement to work with each other. Now 10 is an absolutely arbitrary number for the number of agreements. It could be 3, it could be 5, whatever your team thinks is appropriate. So I'm presenting these in an effort to say, hey, think about creating a team agreement, and here's some of the stuff that could go into that agreement. First one on the list I absolutely love, and it says we'll assume the best intentions for everyone. Everyone makes mistakes, and the first time someone makes a mistake, or even the second time they make a mistake, give them the benefit of the doubt. None of us are perfect. We need to be patient with each other. We need to have each other's backs, and we need to say, you know what, stuff happens. We work with people. It's the nature of the beast. The second thing on the list is we won't get upset with anybody who fails to meet expectations that haven't been clear or haven't been set. And so we have an assumption sometimes that everyone knows what they're supposed to do, that they all have the same information, they know what the policies are, they know what the expectations are, and that they have the same values as we have around, high work ethic, high standards, good quality service, and etc. And sometimes those things are not clear. So we need to make sure that in the process of working with people that we just simply don't assume and create expectations, clarify what is expected of us. So if you're a supervisor or manager watching this video and someone makes a mistake, then your response is to say, I want to make clear to you what my expectation is, what our standard is, what the policy is, whatever that is. And if it's a team environment, you can put it on the table and say, when this happened this week, it came to my attention that perhaps we're not all clear on this, or maybe the standard or expectation has not been set. So the team agreement then is to not make assumptions about what people should or should not be doing, but to take those assumptions, put them on the table, and then talk about what expectations are and clarify that. Third agreement on the list is that we'll give feedback honestly, directly, and not be passive-aggressive. Passive-aggressive is when we appear to be nice, and then behind the scenes we're aggressive and critical and gossipy and backstabbing and grapevining, or we are appearing to be nice, but we are couching a critical message inside all of our nice words. And so what we're talking about here is to make sure that when we learn to be direct as a team, and I'm going to give you a process for how to do that in a couple of minutes, that when we learn to be nice as a team, that we're actually practicing good communication, and that we are not beating around the bush, that we're calling a spade, and I'm going to give you a little tool called T to the power of 3 that will help you do that in a constructive way. And if you have a beef with somebody, that you talk to them directly. And we're going to talk more in a minute about the 24-hour rule. Agreement number 4 says we'll focus on specific behaviors, not attack personal character. So this says, I'm not going to say this person is incompetent, that they're not doing their job, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to say, yesterday afternoon when we were in this meeting, I need to tell you that I was really surprised at what you said. So this is about being direct, about feedback, and about saying these are things that I need to talk to you about. It also means you're professional and calm in the way you approach things. But when we're giving feedback, we're focusing on specific behaviors. We're not saying, you always do this, or, I feel like you're not competent or you're not doing your job. So we don't judge. We don't create trigger words that cause an emotional reaction. We just give feedback about the behavior. This is a really important skill set for us to learn inside teams, and it's a really important skill set for supervisors and managers to have. The 6th agreement on the list is that we give everybody chances to learn and improve, and we expect people after receiving feedback that they deserve a chance to integrate that feedback, to learn from the feedback, and to do better the next time. 6th agreement is that we won't get upset with anyone, we won't get angry with people if they've never been given feedback and given a chance to improve. Now, I'm going to talk again about orientation. We talked about orientation in Module 1, but let me tell you, poor orientation leads to performance issues down the roads. So I want to underline the importance for you as leaders inside your organization to put good orientation programs into play, because we have absolutely no right as supervisors, as leaders, as managers, to be upset with people for not doing something when we have not created kind of a clear expectation and communicated that expectation precisely to people. Agreement number 7 says we won't form cliques and we won't spread gossip. This is a biggie inside teams. Attached to this agreement, however, has to be some training that gives people the support to be able to do this. And I'm going to talk about how to do that in a couple of minutes in this module. And we need to make sure that we don't smother facts with speculation, with assumption, and that we don't hear something and then pass it on and add our own little bit of speculation, assumption to it. Very important that we play a professional role inside our teams, and that we make sure that we have high standards for our own behavior, and that the team as a whole has standards for itself. We'll own our part of the conflict, is agreement number 8. None of us are without some responsibility when a battle breaks out in some form. Now, sometimes the battle is underground and there's tension and stuff happening behind the scenes, and sometimes it happens in a very obvious way. By the way, the easier one to deal with is when it's on the table and in your face. It's not comfortable, but it is absolutely the easier one to deal with. It's much harder to get at the stuff that's gone underground and that is not getting spoken. So we have to own up and say, this is our piece of it. Now, as supervisors and managers, let me tell you, one of our biggest pieces when there's conflict in the team is that we failed to identify it early enough, or we identify it and we don't deal with it. We think, oh, it was just a bad day, we'll just let it blow over. And you need to identify it soon enough and say, I don't want to overreact to things, but if this is going on for a week, 2 weeks, and that you know there's tension in the team, name it, put it on the table, or meet with the people that you think are involved and that have been the catalyst for the tension or the conflict that is happening. So absolutely important that we say, you know what, I have been, as your supervisor, I have been remiss in not bringing this forward before now. I should have talked to you about it, and I didn't. So that's your own part of the conflict. And create a culture within your teams that say, you know, we all own a piece of this. We've either been a catalyst for it, or we've been listening to it and not saying, you know what, I don't want to hear it. That's garbage. That's not stuff that we should be talking about. So, you know, we all have a part to play, and sometimes it's a passive kind of role when we need to step up and be a little more active. Agreement number 9 talks about the fact that we need to be part of creating and implementing solutions. So this is about one of the 12 qualities I talked about earlier. And it really says that part of good teamwork and part of the agreement we want teams to have is to be solution focused. And agreement number 10, the last one of our list, is about not taking our jobs for granted. This is an interesting one to me, because when I read this initially, I sort of thought, well, now, why is this here? But then I thought, how many conversations I've had with employees inside our sector where there's lots of what I call BMWing. It's the only luxury car you'll ever own, the BMW. It stands for bitching, moaning, and whining, BMW, right? And I have heard so much of it over the years, and I'm thinking, you know, you're not entitled to work here, right? You have a job to do. You are hired for that job. You are paid for that job. And yeah, I get we're not well paid, but the reality is we're better paid than we were 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. I could tell you olden day stories of what I was paid when I started in this sector, and I can tell you it's a whole lot less than what you're being paid right now. So we need to be honoring the work that we do in the field, and we need to respect the people who we work with. And we also need to understand that we have no entitlement here. If this is no longer working for you and you can't go to work with a sense of enthusiasm, loving the people you work with, loving the things that you do, and being genuinely passionate about it, it is time to find new work. And there's no dishonor in that. It's an okay thing. Everything has a lifespan, and that may mean that you choose an entirely different field. It might mean you launch off and start your own business. It might mean you stay within the sector but change employers. It might mean you stay with your current employer but look for some other challenges that pump you up, and have a conversation with your supervisor that says, you know, I'm not happy doing what I'm doing, or I'm feeling that I'm browning out or burning out, and you know, I don't feel like I have the enthusiasm and the passion that I used to have, and then look for something else. You are responsible for your own career path. Your organization, your employer, your supervisors can help you and support you in that path, but you alone are responsible for that. On a poster in an organization that I was working with not long ago is the quote that is in the bottom left-hand corner of your handout. I really loved it, so I put it in your handout. wag more, bark less. And I thought, in a very, very simple way, and I'm a dog lover and a dog owner, so it fit for me for that reason. But it really, in a nutshell, kind of captured what we need to do to create strong and healthy organizations and strong and healthy work environments within our team. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit and just talk for a second about the 7 human tendencies when it comes to dealing with issues. So one of the biggest challenges that we talked about within the team is to be honest and direct and deal with issues directly. So I have given you some information that is from a wonderful book by Susan Scott. You'll see in the reference and after the quote at the bottom of the slide. And the book is called Fierce Conversations. I would highly recommend it. Very readable, very simple, available as an ebook if you want to get it quickly. And it is a really, really good analysis, but also a really good tool for how to manage some of those difficult conversations. And by fierce conversations, she means robust and real and strong and passionate. She does not mean aggressive and in your face and mean and nasty and evil. So let's talk about the 7 things that we tend to do when we are dealing with an issue. The first thing is ignore it. Just don't have the conversation all, smooth it over. You know there's a problem, but you convince yourself you don't have time to deal with it, or maybe you say it's not really an issue, it's never happened before, I've got a good team, I'm not going to talk about it. The second one is a little bit the same, but a little bit different, is that we pretend that the issue actually doesn't exist. So in the first one, we smooth it over and we know we have a problem, but we smooth it over. The second one, we say, you know what, we don't have a problem here. It's not our issue. It's somebody else's issue. I'm not going to deal with it. It's not really a problem. And we ignore what we call the elephant in the room. And if you can visualize the elephant in the room, the metaphor is one of how can you not see the elephant? It's there, it's big, it's ugly, it's smelly, and we just, we don't talk about it. And how can we not talk about it when it's that big? The third thing that we tend to do is we name the issue, but we do so gently that the issues get lost. And it often then creates, kind of confusion, or people are not really sure what's really being said. And in the quote at the bottom from Susan Scott, I really love this quote, is that sometimes we put so many pillows around an issue that the message gets lost altogether. So when we talk about naming issues too gently, it leaves people with not really understanding what they're doing. Let me share with you a funny story. We had an employee who was absolutely clearly not doing their job, and we decided that it was necessary to dismiss her. Nobody does that lightly. It is always a very tense day for all of the supervisors, managers who are involved in that process. We invited her into the dismissal interview, and our supervisor was so kind and so gentle, very gracious in how he did this dismissal, that the employee she didn't cry, she didn't kind of react. And he had said several times in what he had said in maybe 2 or 3 minutes, we haven't been happy with your performance, and therefore, regrettably, we've come to the end of the road. He said, those are the kinds of things he said. And she said, and I said, are you okay with that? And she said, yeah, I guess so. And you could hear she was a little hesitant. And then she stood up to leave the interview, and as she got to my office door, she turned, looked back, made eye contact with her supervisor and said, "Can you tell me what time I'm working on Thursday?" And I went, oh, she didn't get it. Right? He had done his job so nicely that he hadn't done the job. And so really, really difficult for him to then draw her back in, ask her to sit down, and then have to say, I wasn't clear. And I had to kind of shore him up a little bit, because I was surprised. He was absolutely shocked. And so what we're really saying here is that we can't put so many pillows around the issues that the person doesn't get the message and ends up being confused when we come out of that. We often do something called mole whacking, which is hit and run kind of issue management. If you remember, there's often at the fair or at the exhibitions, there is a game that you can play, and there's a little mole that pops out of holes in a board, and you have to take a little mallet and whack the mole. So metaphorically, what we're talking about here is that when an issue pops up, all we do is whack it down. Another issue pops up, we whack it down. We're never really solving the issue. We're simply making the mole go underground for a little while until the mole pops back up. It rears its ugly head as we whack it down again. So this kind of suppresses issues. It often will cause a good deal of underground communication, because all those issues and all those moles, all those things that are underground begin to yick, 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 and it can really demoralize a team, and it can cause a bigger blow up down the road. Another thing that we often do is we talk to others to gain support, but we don't talk directly to the person who solves the problem. This is probably one of the most common things that I see, and we're going to create a little 24-hour rule inside our teams that I'm going to recommend to you in a minute that is going to help us address this issue. But suffice it to say is that we're talking to other people about it. We should not be doing that unless it's your supervisor or manager who you've sought out to provide you with some support. And then sometimes we act out our concerns rather than we talk out our concerns. All of you have been in environments where people will do what I call harumphing. They'll go, or they'll eye roll. And they often eye roll in kind of subtle ways to say, right? And that's acting out rather than talking out. My practice, and first of all, I didn't know how to deal with it, and I think that's a very common thing. But my practice, simply go directly to that person and say, tell us what you're thinking. I saw the eye roll. I heard the harumph. I saw you push your chair back. I saw you cross your arms. Talk to us, right? And if the person says, no, I'm okay, and say, no, you're not okay. Right? Because if you were okay, you wouldn't have done any of those things. So call them on it. You can do it with a little bit of humor, but, be a little bit direct and just say, you know what? If someone has something to say, we will all hear it. That's a team culture thing, and it's really important that we practice that. So right now, right here, I want you to talk about it. And if the person says, no, I won't, then seek them out afterwards. Create a safe environment for them, whether it's with you or with another person, and say, this doesn't wash with me. Now, if the person doesn't talk, you can't make them talk. But let me tell you what you've done in calling them on it right then and there in real time. You've raised the bar. And in raising the bar, what have you done? You said to everyone in the team, if you behave that way, Paula's going to notice and Paula's going to call you on it. Which means either don't behave that way or choose to say words rather than to act it out. So it creates a different standard and it raises the bar for how teams communicate. Final one on our list is some people, this is not too common in our sector, but some people get confrontational, they get blaming, they get argumentative, they try to draw people offside, and they may do that behind the scenes, one-on-one or in small groups, and they may do that when they're in a group meeting, but they kind of lose it. They kind of get out there, and of course the advantage of that is it puts the issue on the table. If you didn't know about it already, you sure do now. The second problem is, though, what it really does is doesn't let you solve the problem right now, because it tends to raise emotion, and emotion is really not too constructive in the problem-solving process. Now, if you have real conflict with your team, I'm going to recommend to you that you do some conflict resolution training. This is way beyond the scope of this particular video. We are going to do a multi-video series about conflict resolution at some point in the future, and I'm not going to teach it. I have a wonderful colleague who's going to teach it for us, but it's going to be a really cool mind down on how we deal with real conflict when you end up with a good deal of confrontation, argumentative kinds of problematic behavior. Now, let me talk now. Let's just shift to why people don't talk to each other. The first reason is that we often assume that communication is as natural as just breathing. We are not typically born with the skill set that says we can just go direct one-on-one or in a group of people, stand up, have a backbone, say what we need. Now, some of you have grown up in families where you've learned how to do that. And some of this actually has cultural implications to it. So sometimes we grow up in a family environment or a cultural environment that says call a spade, put the issue on the table, talk it through, have a little scrap, be done with it, go on, and everything is all right. Now, that can be a real positive kind of thing inside a team, but sometimes it also shocks the team. Most of us have grown up in environments where we have learned to not say things. And in your handout, I've given you some phrases. How about don't rock the boat? Let sleeping dogs lie. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. And there are many, many more examples of phrases that kind of are intended and taught us very early on to suppress what we naturally believed and heard. One of the other ones is that children should be seen and not heard. So if you grew up with any of those, it's kind of a small wonder that we have a hard time kind of addressing issues in our adult professional life. And many of us know what we are expected to do, but we don't know how to do it. Let me tell you, we have a question that we often ask in employment interviews. So we sit down with a candidate for a job and we ask them a question. We say, if you had a problem with a coworker and it wasn't working out with them, what would you do? And 99.9% of your candidates will answer the question correctly and say, oh, I talked to them directly about it. The problem is that person then starts work with you 3 weeks later. They have an issue with a coworker and they don't talk to them directly about it. Well, the reason is they don't know how. Right? The what is easy. The how is much, much more difficult. So this means we have to do training. So on the top of slide 11, you'll see here are our best strategies. And number one is that we do training in a team environment. The whole team should go through the training together. It doesn't matter if you have master's level social workers who could teach the course themselves, right through to people who have no university or college education. Any of those people should still attend the team training around learning how to do this. And the how has to involve role play and practice. This is not a theoretical training. It's a here's the how, and you go through the slides and the presentations, and then you sit down and say, all right, you guys, let's practice. And every time we practice, we start off with simpler issues, and we go to more difficult issues, and we go to more difficult issues yet, and we practice kind of incrementally building the skill. Every time we practice in the training environment, everybody gets feedback. So this does two things. It teaches the skill, but it also gets us comfortable with taking feedback from the people that we work with. So it does two things in one, and both those things are almost equally as important. And then we have to create a conversation around safety. Because if people they know what they're supposed to do, and now because of the training, they know how to do it, and we've actually asked them to practice it, so we know that they have real skill, not theoretical, knowledge in their brain. We know they have skill to be able to do this. They won't use that skill if it's not safe. So we have to talk within the team and say, how do we make it safe to be able to do this? And again, I would suggest you create a mini agreement, 3 or 4 things that can be done. One of the things that will create safety is that if 2 people are in conflict or have an issue they need to talk about, that they have one other person there, usually a supervisor or manager, who will be a facilitator or even a mediator if it's real conflict. And that will support both people to find a constructive resolution. It's not a supervisor taking sides or being on one, agreeing with one person and not the other. We then have to say, as supervisors and managers, we've done the training, you know what the expectation is, we have agreement around safety. You have to step up and do this now. Now, what you can say is that until all of those things have been put in place, it is not a fair expectation to say to the team, just talk to each other directly, which is why just having a team agreement without the training and the safety being addressed will never work. So many of you will have this aha moment right now, I hope, that says, we keep saying to our teams, you guys have to talk to each other directly. And, we ask the question in an interview. Everybody answers the question exactly the same. Yes, I would talk to the person directly. We have to teach them how, and we have to create safety before we can set the bar so high as to say everybody has to talk to each other. And then we also need, on an ongoing basis, to give both positive feedback and constructive critical feedback to everyone who tries to do this and to make it better over time. Because the people who are learning how to do it are stepping up, they're taking a risk, they probably don't feel very well the morning that they have to have this meeting with a coworker or a supervisor around an issue that they need to bring forward. And they're being courageous, and they need to be supported and encouraged to continue to do that. Now, I want to make one comment here, and that is, it is not the team's job to address, either individually or collectively, serious performance issues of members of the team. It is just not. That is a supervisor or a manager's job, and it is your job as a leader of your organization to learn how to do that properly. So if you have individual performance issues from an employee that need to be addressed, it is not a good idea to say to your team member, well, you have to talk to them directly about it. If it's a performance issue, it's your job, you are on, and don't duck it. Because then what are they going to be talking about behind your back, underground, in the grapevine? They're going to be saying, you bring an issue to Paula and she doesn't deal with it, right? Because she's chicken too. She's just like the rest of us. She's no better than the rest of us. Well, it's your job to step up and have that issue dealt with appropriately if it's a performance issue. If it's a regular kind of team issue, client issue, participant issue, organizational issue, then I have an expectation always of the teams that I work with that we build the skill, we create the expectation, we develop safety for them, and then it is a fair standard to say, you guys need to talk about this. Now, one of the questions is, how do we talk about it? So I devised this a few years ago. It's called T to the power of 3. Tact, tone, and timing. We have some people who are pretty good at naming an issue, but they often do it a little too aggressively, a little too confrontationally, a little bit too much in your face. So that's where the tact comes in, is to find the right way to say it. Now, for many of us that are really uncomfortable with addressing issues, it means that we have to, come clean and be tactful, but not too tactful, because we need to learn how to be direct. So first T is tact. The second one is tone. Be kind, be calm, be direct. Right? This is not an elevated, this is not an argument, it's not I'm spoiling for a fight. It's I'm going to stay calm, I'm going to stay grounded, I'm going to be professional, and I'm going to still say exactly what I need to say. And then finally, timing. Let's choose the right place, the right time of day, the right moment. Let's either look for that moment or engineer that moment, and we can do that by doing directly to the person and say, I need to have a conversation with you. It's going to take us about 10 minutes. Can I see you tomorrow afternoon? And that's a perfectly fine way of approaching it. The person might say, yeah, but what is it? And I'll say, you know what, we have to do this at the right time. So let's meet privately and let's talk about this. And that might be a little concerning and it might worry them a little bit. They'll live through it. So just say, I don't want to talk about it now because the time is not right. So tact, tone, and timing are the 3 things that we need to honor when we talk about how we talk about people. Now, many of you have probably heard about and are familiar with the 24-hour rule. I'm going to give you kind of Paula's version of the 24-hour rule because I think it has to go a little bit deeper than just to say if you have a problem, you have to talk about it in 24 hours, right? We need a little bit more than that. It's a little bit naive to believe that everyone who sees a problem or identifies a problem will just step up and deal with it in 24 hours. So let me just ask you to do a little kind of critical analysis. Let's suppose we have a problem and you have a problem with someone and you're kind of wondering, do I deal with it? Do I let it go? How, right? So then ask yourself a question. Will it matter a day from now? And if you say, yeah, it will. If you say, will it matter a week from now? Yeah, it will. If it matter a month from now, yeah, it will. Guess what? You have to deal with it. No ducking, right? So you're going to have to, swallow hard, dig deep and use your skills that you've acquired to be able to address the issue. If you say, in answer to the first question, in a day or 2 from now, this little problem will be replaced by another problem that probably won't bother me, it'll be fine, then the answer to the question is just let it go. You don't have to deal with it. Now I'm going to give you a little add-on to that in a minute, but if we can honestly say in a day or 2 from now, I'll have forgotten it, or it will not be something that will be bothering me, it'll be a blip on the screen of the week in the workplace, then the answer is let it go. And I mean let it go. I mean you're not talking about it behind other people's backs, in the grapevine, you're not sitting at the coffee table or visiting in a parking lot or, bumping into somebody at the grocery store and then saying, well, what happened this week and it really ticks me off. If you've let it go, then you clam up and you don't talk about it ever again because you don't need to. It's not going to bug you, okay? But if you say to yourself, 3 days from now, a week from now, this is still going to be bothering me, then kick in the 24-hour rule, which says use your skills to address that issue with tact, tone, and timing directly with the individual. So what you can see here is we're building a series of layers around communication within the team that say We know it's an expectation, but we have to create processes and skills that allow everyone in the team to actually practice this. The reason we often don't have this within teams, despite the fact we have a team agreement that says we have to talk to each other, is that we don't have the layers positioned properly. We haven't gone to enough extent of detail to be able to say, now we have the right to expect this of people. Now, the question I'm going to ask you is, when you have this issue, have you already talked to somebody else about it? And the answer is, if it's important enough to talk to somebody else about it, it's important enough to address directly. Okay? That's a high standard for us to hold ourselves to in our own behavior, but it's really important that we understand if we are already yicking and yakking, other than to our supervisor and manager, who we have every right to go to look for support and guidance on an issue. If we've talked to other person or people about it, then let's understand it's our job to go directly to the individual that we're bugged by or that we have an issue with. Now, the next thing is we have to decide about how we're going to approach that, right? And if you need some support from your supervisor and manager to role play it, or to figure out how you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, what you want to say, etc. And it's really important that we ask ourselves, what would solve the issue? Because remember, good teams, good members within a team are solution focused. So the purpose of addressing an issue is not to go say, boom, 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 you're bad, I'm right, you're wrong, blah, blah, right? The purpose is to say, here's the issue, here's what I think we can do about it. And then you're in conversation with the other person. So you have to bring something constructive to the conversation beyond just being able to, muster your courage and address the issue. So really important that you understand that your job is to be constructive and bring forward issues. Now, or bring forward solutions. Maybe the person won't agree with your solutions. That's okay. Then it's all right to say to them, well, what are your ideas? Be constructive, throw something out from your perspective that would resolve this issue. Now, let's suppose that you've decided the issue won't bother you for very long and you've decided to let it go. But you get a week down the road and you're still either talking to other people about it or inside your head, it's still bouncing around, you're still annoyed, you're still frustrated. From that moment on, the 24-hour rule kicks in, which is you have 24 hours now to be able to find a way to hold a meeting, to have a conversation with that person. I want to add something to this list, and that is never try to deal with important issues that are related to relationship and communication by email. It usually blows up. There's no way of interpreting facial expressions and tone. Very often your tone is angry because you fire off the email and you can tell the way your fingers are typing on the keyboard, how upset you are. You press send and you thought, I should have proofread that. And then you reread it and you think, oh, if I could take that back, I might say that a little differently, etc. So emails are not the way to deal with interpersonal issues, and they're not the way to solve things. It usually makes things worse. So make this a face-to-face conversation. Finally, I'm going to talk about 7 ways to strengthen team communication. And the one I want to talk about first is that you need to facilitate a meeting or a series of meetings with your entire team to create your team agreement around behavior and how you'll communicate. It's absolutely essential to be able to do that, and it may take more than one meeting to do. Make sure you have somebody taking notes or flip charting, and then turn it into 1 or 2 typewritten pages, circulate it. I know of teams that have everybody sign it, and new members come in. I don't think signing it's important. I think the process of getting people to the conversation is important, and it's really important that you once a year at least look at that agreement and continue to revisit it and tweak it and refine it so that everybody understands what's there and what they've actually committed to. Second thing is our list is to plan for some unstructured time so that you build the social connections between team members. I really like having, suppose you have a 10 o'clock team meeting or a 1 o'clock team meeting, have a half an hour social kind of event prior to that. Put some donuts and coffee on the table or some cookies or whatever. Or do a little fun group exercise. So, come together at 12:30 for a 1 o'clock meeting. Start your business meeting sharp on the time that you've set. But for the half hour prior to that, have one of your members of your team lead a little fun exercise. Do something social. Do something pleasant. Do a little scavenger hunt, have a little personal disclosure. I did one with my team once, and I asked the question, what is the strangest thing you have ever done for money? And it led to a whole variety of conversations. So based on that, I did another one about a month later, and I asked the question, What is the one thing in your life that other people would never guess about you? And this turned into a really cool conversation. I mean, we had everything from people who used to work on pig farms right through to one member of our team was actually a private pilot, and she'd done it on a dare. Her sons has always told her that she never did anything exciting, and she said, what do you want me to do? And they said, oh, I don't know, go get your pilot's license. And she went out and she did it. So it was so cool. It led to a whole different set of conversations. And so that was just about taking that few minutes before we buckled down to our real work, and to be able to get to know each other a little bit. Third thing on our list is to schedule a team retreat every 6 months to a year. That might cost you a little bit of money, but let me tell you, teams that do retreats and have some fun and some learning at their retreats, and it doesn't have to be super structured, it doesn't have to be really expensive, but let people get away from their normal work, cover their workloads with relief staff, or just let things slide for a day, and invite them to come into an environment that is outside of the work context. So that can be a full-on retreat environment, or it can be a local hotel, or it can be somebody's living room or backyard. It doesn't matter. It's away from their normal work environment. Put a little structure around it. Do a little learning that enhances people's skills, and have some fun. Fourth thing on our list is any time that you have a major incident, a critical incident, whether that's some conflict or it's a crisis that hits a client or a participant in your program. We deal very often with aging populations of people. So, people who get critically ill or who die, normal part of the work that we do. Every time there's a critical incident, lead a stress debriefing process that lets people communicate how they feel about it. It's not a problem-solving meeting. It's a critical event. Stress debriefing is really about having people understand and come to terms to what happened and other people and their own emotion around that. And make sure this is facilitated by someone who has skill sets that relate to critical incident debriefing. Fifth thing on our list for helping teams become really communicative and effective is develop team depth by creating leadership opportunities, and we can do that in so many simple ways. Rather than the supervisor chairing every single team meeting, teach the whole team how to lead a meeting, and then rotate the chairpersonship of that. Rather than one person doing the minutes to all the meetings, rotate that responsibility. Create a coaching program inside your team or inside your program or your agency that allows new people to be on a learning curve, and then builds the skills of longer-term people to be able to be the coaches. And then make sure when people are attending conferences or going to training courses that they come back and make a presentation. That shares the information, but it also teaches something really important, like a public speaking skill for the person who's sharing that back. We want to make sure that we get the whole team involved in developing a program-specific orientation. I mentioned that in Module 1 when we talked about orientation, but it is a huge bonus to team culture when the whole team is responsible for bringing in and embracing and teaching and coaching new employees. When we leave that just to senior members of the team or to supervisors, it's okay because it'll happen, but it doesn't share the ownership for that across the whole team, and it doesn't strengthen and deepen the team's responsibility and sharing and support of each other when they come in. And then finally, I want you to practice zero tolerance of backstabbing, gossiping, negative and critical behavior, and be a good role model for that. Be people's cheerleaders. Step up your own game so that you are in a positive place, and then say, look, I am going to be your role model. I don't deal with stuff that way. If we need to have a conversation, I bring that forward. I have that same standard and expectation for everybody. And absolutely use progressive discipline, and we'll talk about that in a whole module. Use progressive discipline with employees who don't meet that standard. If we practice zero tolerance of it, you'll only have to do it once or twice, and people will either be more positive or they'll be more careful. I can't change people's attitudes. I can't make them happy with their work if they're not happy, but I can influence their behavior. And what I mostly care about is, do they go to work? Do they do their job positively and well and to the best of their abilities? And are they a positive influence and a bright light on the string of all of the lights that have to serve the people in the organization that we work with? And if any employee repeatedly proves themselves not prepared to do that, they need to be gone from your organization. And I know that sounds harsh. I am a real softie when it comes to supervision, but we all must have a line in the sand that we'll draw. And allowing this kind of behavior on parts of certain team members drags the whole team down. It demoralizes people. I have a little phrase that I use: in with a teaspoon, out with a shovel. You know, we do all of these positive things a teaspoon at a time. We build our team and we strengthen our team a teaspoon at a time. And then by doing one thing wrong or not doing one thing, we end up taking all that effort with a whole shovel load and we throw it right back out, and it's if we've done nothing at all. So it's an important line to draw, and the backstabbing and the negativity cannot be tolerated. Now, I want you to remember, before you discipline anybody, before you fire anybody, you have a responsibility to your team to build all of those layers that we've talked about in this module. So absolutely important that you do your part before you can then say to people, we have no tolerance for that kind of stuff. So it's a hand-in-glove relationship. We're in partnership, and we have to do our part as leaders in the organization. I have just one more slide, and I'm not going to read these quotes to you, but I'm a real quote fiend, and I always have a collection of them around. And so I put some of them in here that I think are really fun. And the Mahatma Gandhi quote is the one, bright pink in the middle on the left-hand side. I really I love this quote, and it's one of mine, and as a organization leader, it's one that really resonates for me. And when I left my team as an executive director, they did a t-shirt for me that they had hand embroidered. I wore the t-shirt out, and what it said was, "I must hurry and catch up with the others, for I am their leader." So until Module 4, my name is Paula MacLean. I'm your leadership coach. I hope you've enjoyed the Teamwork and Communication module. All the best until next time. Bye for now.